Hey guys, welcome back. Kamina the Koach here. A really good mood today. I have been out of actual work, not spiritual work, but out of work for 3 weeks this Wednesday. So today is March 22nd, Monday, March 22nd, 2021. And yeah, I've been out of work for a minute and it is starting to get unnerving. So almost a month of being out of work. So I'm really thankful to have gotten just a little something. It's not much. I have some interviews coming up and I'm really hopeful for these interviews. Unfortunately, the work that I've got coming up may interfere with the interviews that I have coming up, but neither here nor there. I'm still thankful for the work. I'm rambling. I'm rambling because I'm really nervous to do this video. I'm nervous to do this video because there's a really big divide in the adoptee community. So this video is really really aimed at anyone whose life has been touched by adoption, and odds are you probably know somebody who's been adopted or relinquished a child, surrendered a child, or adopted a child. So probably your life has in some way been touched by adoption, even if the people in your life haven't told you that they have been a part of that portion of adoption. So what I want to talk about is a really it can be a really touchy topic. I want to talk about something that it's coined coming out of the fog, and it can be a really fiery conversation, especially for those who choose to stay in the fog. So I will attest that there is a large amount of documentation and scientific evidence that proves that adoption is trauma. I've quoted these statistics many times in my videos. Adoptees only make up in the United States 2 to 3% of the population. I'm not sure what that is worldwide. In the United States, we only make up 2 to 3% of the population, but we make up about 15% of the serial killers. We're 15% more likely to kill our parents. We make up about 15% of the people with mental health issues. We make up about 15% of the prison population. That is an outrageous number. So there has also been a large amount of scientific evidence that proves that separating a child from their mother at birth is traumatic, and it's trauma that our brains remember, even though we don't our subconscious remembers that, and we don't actually remember. However, I will say this. So there are all sorts of things that can be traumatic. Car accidents can be traumatic. Being held down for a medical procedure as a young child can be traumatic. Rape, violent crimes, all of these things can be traumatic, and it is a very individual reaction. Going to war as well can be traumatic. So every person's reaction to this trauma is very different, and a lot of how it manifests itself in your life has to do with how you have lived your life. And normally I do move my hands a lot more. I have my window open. It's kind of chilly, so I'm kind of sitting on my hands. I think I'm putting on my sweater. So anyways, each person experiences trauma differently depending on how they're made up, their resiliency level, maybe even their diet and all that kind of stuff, right? So just because something is wildly traumatic to one person, sorry, I'm gonna lock that. Just because something was wildly traumatic to one person doesn't mean it's going to be wildly traumatic to the next. However, I will attest and stand to that adoption is definitely a form of trauma. Mild or severe, it's still a form of trauma. If you are interested in adoption, if you have adopted, if you are an adoptee and you haven't read it already, I really encourage you to go read The Primal Wound. And I'll leave that at that. So, what is coming out of the fog? And why don't why doesn't everyone do it? Well, first of all, it's coming out of the fog is coming into the realization of what adoption is. And society at large, especially in the United States, makes adoption out to be hearts and rainbows, and it's just something wonderful, and we just really celebrate people who adopt, and we celebrate people who relinquish babies, and we turn a blind eye to how serious that is, and what a lasting effect that has on the women who gave away their babies and or were forced to give away their babies, they're forced to relinquish their babies, and the babies who were relinquished, and how that can be a lifetime sorrow. And so I think that, so I didn't find out that I was adopted until I was 32, and I've done a video before about why I waited until I was 42 to begin the coming out of the fog process. And so that alone should let you know that just deciding to come to the realization of what adoption is not simple or easy or without a great deal of pain. I've heard it likened to grieving the death of a loved one and all of the stages of grief, denial and anger and acceptance, and it's not linear. Sometimes we bounce back and forth, and if you've ever heard the term angry adoptee, it's hard for me to hear that because, I'm also a woman of color, and I also often get termed angry Black woman. So it's understandable, and I make space for you, and it's perfectly normal to be angry when you start coming to the realization of what happened to you if you're an adoptee, or what happened to you if you were a woman who was forced to relinquish your child, or even if you weren't forced to, even if you thought you were doing the best thing possible. When you come to the realization of what happened, it's possible that you're very angry and that you're very sad and feeling lost and lonely and possibly suicidal. There's so much stuff that goes with it. There's just so much stuff that goes with it. And so it is perfectly understandable to me anyways why somebody would choose to stay in that space. I know that when I found out I was adopted, I didn't have emotional space to address it. When I found out that I could not access first of all, when I found out that my birth certificate was not real, that was not my original birth certificate, and that I can't access it. So once I found out that I am adopted, I found out that this birth certificate, and this is true for all adoptees in the United States anyways, so the birth certificate is not my original birth certificate, and I can't access it. It was really painful for me to realize that, and I just really wasn't ready to open up this wound, because I had enough stuff going on in my life with an unfaithful partner and an unplanned pregnancy and being forced out of the military. I had a car that had suddenly stopped working, a very serious issue with the car. So I had so much other stuff going on. I just didn't have space. And it's perfectly understandable. So, it is usually some kind of major life event that spurs this on. So, I know someone, a lot of people actually, that having a child brought this on. For me personally, it was midlife, coming to a place where I start seeing the end of my life, start looking at death. That's what brought it on for me personally. Um, so there is just so major sickness as well could bring it on. I have heard that for birth mothers, for first mothers, what can bring it on is the point in life where their child becomes a teenager, recognizing that their baby is no longer a baby and they will never get to parent this child, because birth mothers actually do come out of the fog as well. Now, a population that is, it's not as popular and it's not as common for them to come out of the fog as birth parents. Um, I'm sorry, correction, adoptive parents. Um, I know that people adopt for different reasons. People adopt for infertility reasons. People adopt because they have a savior complex. They want to feel like they've saved a child. Um, and some people, and some adoptees adopt because they feel like they need to pay it forward. Um, and it is much less common to hear about people who have adopted coming out of the fog, but it can happen. I can't give you really milestones for that because I really haven't researched it and I just don't hear about it very much. And I also, unfortunately, haven't heard about a lot of adoptive parents being supportive of their adopted children as they begin the coming out of the frog process, which is also another reason why adoptees can choose not to begin this process, because it could also end up causing them to have a huge rift between them and their family. And now I will also suggest that as adoptees that we stop using or and start using and. You can have two families, and you do have two families. So it could be a fear of losing that adoptive family that keeps an adoptee firmly planted in the fog, and that's their choice. Or I will submit that that's their choice. Um, So, what then can we do to support ourselves and support others as they go through this process? I will suggest that it is exhausting and completely tedious to have friends and loved ones in your life that don't understand what you're going through, and to have to educate and explain this to everyone. And I think that that's why it's really important to have a support system. And so, again, I will remind everyone that I am a coach and a level 4 master Reiki healer. So that's energy medicine. So, and I'm really just a loving, kind, compassionate soul. So please, my email is KaminaTheKoach@gmail.com. If you don't have anybody else to talk to, please reach out to me. Please don't go through this alone. I'm considering starting a support group, maybe, if we can work something out for that. It takes a lot of work to get that accomplished. You need a support system. Get on some of these groups online. So I'm a transracial adoptee. That means I was adopted by a family that is not the same race as me. I was adopted by a white family. There are a lot of transracial adoptee groups online. I have one on Facebook, Transracial Adoptees Unite. There are other transracial adoptees group. There's a Facebook group, Adoptees of Color, if you are adult adoptees of color, if you are an adoptee of color. The same way in the world, there are lots of different types of adoptees, just like there are different types of people. So I suggest finding a group that is well suited to you and some place where you can feel comfortable and find community. Um, there's also for those who have begun the process of coming out of fog, or those that are just beginning to open up their eyes to racism, those transracial adoptees that were adopted by white parents. So there is a group called Adoptees Who Cut Ties. Um, and so cut ties to maybe that adopted family, or they found their first family and had to cut ties. So all different places where you can find community. If you're on Clubhouse, there's a large community of adoptees on Clubhouse. I'm also on Clubhouse. I'm Kamina Hall on Clubhouse, Kamina the Koach. Feel free to search me there. I'll have pop-up healing rooms and discussion rooms on techniques that you can use to comfort yourself and self-soothe and make sure that you're in a safe place. You need a support system, people that you can call when you're feeling distressed, people who understand what you're going through. And I would say that that's probably one of the largest healing factors as you go through this. I'll offer something else, a couple of little things. I'll offer you a self-affirmation that I think that you should repeat to yourself 4 times a day, 15 times each time. It takes about a minute. So if you want to write it down, I am lovable. You're talking to your inner child. I am lovable. Or you are lovable. You're talking to your inner child. You are lovable. I know it doesn't feel that way. What happened to you is not your fault. And you and your inner child, and we are okay. You are lovable. What happened to you is not your fault. I'm sorry. You are lovable. I know it doesn't feel that way. What happened to you is not your fault, and we are okay. I still do that 60 times a day. So I break it up into three times, 20 times each. It's usually the first thing I do before I get out of bed with my meditation in the morning. It is really important that you affirm your self-worth to that inner child and to yourself. Really important. So that's especially to adoptees and to birth moms alike. And really to anybody who's gone through any kind of childhood trauma, it's a really great affirmation. In moments of triggers, in moments of intense trigger, you have a reset button right here. So I'm really into somatic therapy. You have a reset button right here. You can keep a cold bottle of ice water in the freezer, and in real moments of distress, you can set it there with some pressure, and it's a reset button. Especially for adoptees with adoptee trauma, I recommend, so I actually will back up into a corner and I will really, really hug myself, because when I back up into that corner and press, it feels like a hug, and it actually resets my nervous system. Because if you have somebody to hug you, that's great. It's that it lets your nervous system know that you're safe. Because a lot of times we feel fear, and we feel fear because we never really felt safe, because we were taken away from our mothers at birth. So we never really felt safe. Also, if you have trouble sleeping, I do this every night as well. I also have a weighted blanket. If you have trouble sleeping, if you have anxiety, I really highly recommend a weighted blanket. So I sleep and skin to skin with my right hand, it doesn't matter which, with my right hand on my heart and my left hand on my tummy. And it's really, really, really soothing and makes it much easier. It's like a turn off switch for my brain. Really, really helps me sleep. So just some tips on helping you get through coming out of the fog, what coming out of the fog is, who is coming out of the fog, why don't people come out of the fog. Please, please, please get you a support system if you are going through this. Please get you a support system. If you don't have one, please reach out. I'm happy to do love sessions. If you can, I'll accept anything you can afford to pay me. And if you can't afford to pay me at all, you don't have to. I know what it's like to need help and not be able to afford it. I know. So I'm here for you, completely here for you. If you don't reach out to me, reach out to somebody. Please don't go through this alone. It is dangerous. to go through this alone. All right. So as always, Kamina the Coach, sending you love, light, peace, and joy. I love you. Don't be alone through this. And for those of you who choose to stay in the fog, don't be mean to people who are choosing to come out of the fog. Everybody has their rights. It's our right to accept what is the truth. And if you want to stay in your truth, that's okay. Let's respect everybody's feelings and emotions on this topic. It's a very sensitive topic. And until next time, Kamina the Coach, I'm out of here.